Hi, Thom Hartmann here. I have a new book out. It's called The Crash of 2016. Over the last 30-plus years, we've seen this concerted effort, politically, economically, intellectually, to remake the United States in the image of these very, very wealthy economic royalists, to borrow Franklin Roosevelt's phrase. Thus, my book, The Crash of 2016, The Plot to Destroy America and What We Can Do About It, which is available in all fine bookstores now. You can find out what is the crash of 2016, why that year, what is the royalist conspiracy, what can we do to stop it, what happens to the United States after 2016. And in the book is my letter to my great-grandchildren, what I want them to know, because previous crashes have given us, this country, enormous opportunity to progress. The Revolutionary War gave us democratic self-government. The Civil War put an end to slavery. Great Depression, World War II built the American middle class. So there's good news here. We've done this before. We've gotten better because of these crashes. The crash of 2016. Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. While the media was focused on Chris Christie and Bridgegate, Congress moved closer to accepting a massive international trade agreement. On Thursday, a bipartisan group of U.S. senators proposed legislation to give the Obama administration the power to fast-track the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other controversial trade deals. The White House welcomed the fast-track proposal and issued a statement saying, "We need to use every tool we have to knock down trade barriers." If this legislation passes, the president could push through the TPP and other deals, and Congress would only get an up or down vote on whether or not to approve them. The TPP is the largest of these proposed deals, as it includes the U.S. and 11 Pacific Rim nations, and nearly all of its provisions have been negotiated in secret. The few leaked sections of the TPP exposed the danger of this trade deal to our jobs, our environment, our civil rights, and even our national sovereignty. This massive trade agreement would even allow mega corporations to challenge U.S. laws that stand in the way of their unending greed. We don't need free trade, which drives down wages and sends more American jobs overseas. We need fair trade. And we certainly don't need to give corporations any more power to put profits over people. Congress should never give up their power to debate and amend trade agreements, and they must stop the Trans-Pacific Partnership from destroying our jobs, our civil rights, and our national sovereignty. In Screwed News, Republicans in Missouri began the new legislative year with a bang. Rather than starting the year off focusing on new jobs or boosting their economy, right-wing lawmakers in that state are fighting to pass right-to-work-for-less legislation. Despite the fact that Governor Jay Nixon has promised to veto the bill if it passes, Republican House Speaker Tim Jones is pushing forward the anti-labor legislation. For years, the Missouri Republican Party has been advocating so-called right-to-work bills like those recently passed in Indiana and Michigan. Workers in states which have enacted the right-to-work-for-less laws have seen their yearly wages decline by an average of $1,500 per worker, and their health benefits and pensions get slashed. These bills do nothing but benefit big business and destroy unions. The voters of Missouri need to make it clear that they will not accept any right-to-work-for-less laws from their legislators. In the best of the rest of the news, the governor of New York has made a big commitment to renewable energy. On Wednesday, Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that his New York Sun initiative will invest $1 billion in new funding for solar energy projects over the next decade. That program has already installed about 300 megawatts of solar capacity since it started in 2012. Governor Cuomo hopes to install another 3,000 megawatts with this new investment. He explained, "That's enough solar power for 465,000 New York homes to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 2.3 million tons annually, the equivalent of taking almost 435,000 cars off the road, and to create more than 13,000 new solar jobs." In addition to the 10-year program, Governor Cuomo unveiled a $40 million competition to boost the development of community microgrids and another public-private program to come up with a renewable heating source for New York. These programs will go a long way toward helping the people of New York City and New York State with energy prices and towards putting their state on the path to a cleaner future. According to radcast.org, waves of radiation have moved into other parts of our country, causing levels to spike in many regions. Charleston, West Virginia is averaging 43 counts per minute with spikes of 73, and Salisbury, Mass. Is sitting at 45 with highs of 76. Spearfish, South Dakota is reporting levels of 60 counts per minute with spikes of 88 counts per minute. Lakewood, Colorado is hovering at 65 with highs of 101. Fresno, Colorado is sitting at 42 with spikes to 70 counts per minute. And Tucson, Arizona is averaging 50 with peaks up to 154 counts per minute. Seaside, Oregon is seeing an average of 31 counts per minute with highs of 61. And Seattle, Washington is sitting at 30 counts a minute with spikes of 59. Radcast.org's alert level is 100 counts per minute, but they remind us that there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation. The Environmental Protection Agency is making fracking companies disclose their use of toxic chemicals, but only for fracking companies that are drilling in federal waters. The EPA established a new rule requiring gas and oil companies to publicly report the dangerous chemicals used during the fracking process, which are typically dumped into the open ocean. Environmental groups would prefer that the EPA require all fracking wells to report their pollution or ban them from drilling in the ocean entirely, but at least some of these companies will finally have to reveal the toxic makeup of their fracking sludge. And finally, Australia's National Science Agency has apologized to a 7-year-old girl named Sophie for failing to make her a fire-breathing dragon. Sophie asked her parents for a pet dragon for Christmas and was told that such a gift wasn't possible, so she wrote a letter to the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization asking the scientists if they could make her a flying dragon. She wrote that she would name the dragon Toothless if it was a girl, after the friendly dragon in a famous book series, or Stuart if it was a boy, after her father. Scientists issued her a formal apology, saying, "We've missed something. Over the past 87 years, we have not been able to create a dragon or dragon eggs." The story didn't end there, however, as the scientists sent Sophie her very own dragon, made from titanium on a 3D printer. It may not fly or breathe fire, but they said, "We couldn't sit here and do nothing. After all, we promised Sophie we'd look into it." And that's the way it is. Today, Friday, January 10th, 2014. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you, and welcome to our program. It is Friday, so of course the first hour of our program every Friday is the man I think of as America's senator, although the proud citizens of Vermont are very pleased to have him as their senator, Senator Bernie Sanders, and Bernie will be taking your calls right after our brief conversation here about the issues of the day. Senator, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Tom.
Great to have you. So what's on your agenda, Bernie?
Well, there is a whole lot of stuff going on, and let me just briefly go through a few of the issues. There is national discussion now about the war on poverty because it was about 50 years ago, exactly 50 years ago, that Lyndon Johnson announced his war on poverty. And I think we take for granted today so much that was in the legislation that followed his speech that we sometimes, I think, forget about the importance of some of that legislation. What Johnson did is provide health insurance to all seniors as a guaranteed right through Medicare. And Medicare today is an extremely popular and, needless to say, extremely important program that provides quality health insurance and prescription drugs for millions and millions of seniors. That was part of the war on poverty. Medicaid was part of the war on poverty. And while Medicaid continues to struggle with lower reimbursement rates than it should, it has been a lifeline for tens and tens, I think so, over 70 million children and working people and lower-income people who before Medicaid had no place to turn when they needed to go to the doctor, when they needed to go to the hospital, and Medicaid provides that care. The war on poverty brought forth food stamps. Again, we take food stamps for granted today, and we debate how much we should be spending. But that was a declaration by Johnson and the Congress of 50 years ago that nobody in America should go hungry, and that was not always the case. And we have a long way to go, but the fact that right now we provide assistance to people when they otherwise would be hungry is nothing to minimize. The Older Americans Act brought forth the concept, the war on poverty brought forth the concept of the Community Health Center program, something which I've been very active in. And that now provides primary health care and dental care and low-cost prescription drugs and mental health counseling to somewhere around 24 million Americans in every state in this country. So when you see a community health center, understand that that idea germinated from the war on poverty. The Older Americans Act and the Meals on Wheels program and support for senior centers all over this country came from the war on poverty. So the bottom line here is that, in my view, the war on poverty has been very, very successful in protecting the lives and the well-being of tens and tens and tens of millions of Americans. Can we do better? Absolutely. Are there some programs that should be improved? No question about it. But what we should not forget is that when the war on poverty was initiated in the mid-1960s, the economy was fairly strong. And yet at that point, the poverty rate was 19.5%. Today, as a result of the Wall Street collapse, the economy is not strong, and yet poverty is at 15%, much higher than we want it to be, but less than it was when the program was initiated in the 1960s. And what economists tell us, poverty rate today without the war on poverty programs would be at 29%.
Wow.
So, last point that I would make on that issue is that if we look at what we have done as a nation compared to many other countries in Europe or Scandinavia, we should appreciate that we have yet a long way to go. The poverty rate for children in this country, 21.5%, much higher than other countries around the world. In fact, the highest in the industrialized world. In terms of maternity leave and the kind of benefits you get when you're having a baby, we are far behind most of the rest of the world. In terms of retirement benefits, we are behind many other countries. So in terms of establishing a strong safety net for vulnerable people, the war on poverty took us a significant step forward, and Johnson deserves a lot of credit for that. I know, that as a president, he is much maligned for the war on Vietnam, but people, I think, forget about the enormously important role he played in pushing and using his legislative skills as a president, former majority leader, and getting that legislation passed, which is improving the lives of millions and millions and millions of people. So that is an issue I think you're going to be hearing a lot about in the coming weeks. Other issue out there, obviously, is the issue of extending emergency unemployment benefits for 1.3 million Americans who have just lost those benefits at the end of the year. The issue here is that while the unemployment numbers are going down slowly, real unemployment today remains at 13%, and there are many states in the country where it is much higher than that. Long-term unemployment is very, very, very high. In fact, it is higher than it has been, I believe, in the last 50 years, and that means that people who lose their jobs are remaining unemployed for 6 months or longer at far higher levels than we have seen for a very long time. Now, the politics of this business is that when Bush was president and we extended unemployment benefits for the long-term unemployed, Bush and the Republicans at that point did not call for offsets. They understood that we had an emergency situation and they voted appropriately. Now that Obama is president, suddenly they want offsets. And many of the offsets that they are looking at are very, very bad offsets. So to help protect the families of long-term unemployed, they want to cut health care benefits. Or they're interested in bringing forward a Keystone pipeline or some other piece of legislation which has nothing to do with the issue at hand. So we're going to focus on that. It's very imperative that we pass an extension of these long-term unemployed benefits on behalf of 1.3 million workers and their families. It's also important for the economy because if these folks don't have, and the average amount that they get is all of $300 a week, but that $300 is life and death to a whole lot of folks. And if they don't have that money to spend, the economists tell us we'll lose approximately 200,000 jobs, and GDP will decline in the coming year by about 0.2%. So this is an issue that will be was discussed last week. It will be back in discussion again next week. Another issue that I know many people are concerned about is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the so-called TPP, and the issue of a fast track on that. I am very, very strongly opposed to fast track. And what fast track means is that members of Congress cannot provide amendments, cannot improve the legislation that comes to us. And it's an expedited process to get this thing passed. As you and I have discussed for many, many years, trade policy in this country, whether it's NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, has kind of led to a race to the bottom. American workers are forced to compete with desperate people all over the world, and one of the trade partners in a TPP would be Vietnam, where the minimum wage there is 28 cents an hour. And I am not sure that it is in the best interest of American workers to be competing against people who make all of 28 cents an hour. So I think this is an issue we got to focus on. I am not sympathetic to it, and I am certainly not sympathetic to a fast-track proposal which expedites it.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Your calls for Senator Bernie Sanders coming up next right here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. You can sign up for the Bernie Buzz there, his newsletter.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Also at sanders.senate.gov, you'll find the news of the day. It's a great news aggregation site. They put a lot of work into that site. It's worth checking out. We'll be right back. And welcome back. And Paul in South Lyon, Michigan, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish TV satellite network. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, thanks for your service to the country, Senator.
Thank you, Paul.
The Republicans, led by Ayn Rand Paul, think money from the government is a disservice to people, and that's a quote. So let's stop doing a disservice to the Republicans and cut off their government paychecks for their do-nothing jobs and criminals. I'm an economist. Can you pass along some economic facts? Paying unemployment benefits and raising the minimum wage pay for themselves in increased economic activity. The 3-month extension of unemployment benefits costs roughly $5 billion. This adds $10 billion to the economy from the economic multiplier effect, which is a well-known economic fact. And when the government collects taxes on this $10 billion in economic activity, it adds up to $4 billion in the first year. And in the following years, the government makes a profit by paying unemployment benefits through increased taxes in the long term. But the Republicans are too economic illiterate and short-sighted to see this.
Well, Paul, thank you very much, and I agree with what you said. Investing in people in the long run is cost-effective. It's humane, obviously. It eases suffering. Imagine somebody who is 50 or 55 years of age who is out there month after month desperately looking for work, and now their unemployment stops. What happens to them and their family? So from a human point of view, it's the right thing to do. But what the point that Paul is making, and I tried to make a moment ago, is that when these folks have that $300 a week on average to spend, they're spending it in their communities. And in doing that, they create jobs. Without that money, the economists tell us that we would lose about 200,000 jobs a year and see a decline in our GDP by 0.2%. That's the point that Paul is making. In terms of minimum wage, I think it's the same principle. One way that we could actually cut the deficit when we raise the minimum wage is stop subsidizing companies like Walmart or Burger King or McDonald's, who pay very often the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour, or maybe just a little bit more for that. And what happens when you have working people in McDonald's or at Walmart or Burger King or other fast food restaurants, how do they survive? Well, in order to survive when you're earning those low wages, you need to get Medicaid, you need to get food stamps, you need to get government-subsidized housing. And they need all of these federal taxpayer-supported programs because their employers are paying them starvation wages. And the point that Paul is making, which is an absolute right point, is if you raise the minimum wage, then the government doesn't have to provide those services. If you extend unemployment benefits, it ends up paying for itself through an economic multiplier. So Paul's point is, in my view, absolutely correct.
These guys obviously know this because they extended these things during the Bush administration. Could it be that they're just trying to crash the economy because Obama's president?
Well, I think what it is, you have seen in the last several years a real movement to the right on the part of the Republican Party. And that is being pushed heavily by folks like the Koch brothers and some other billionaire campaign contributors.
So you think many of them are just dancing to the tune of ideology?
After the break.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back. It's 20 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls right after this. This portion of the Thom Hartmann Program is underwritten in part by Carbonite.com, Stamps.com, and EdisonFactor.com. Welcome back to the place where despair is not an option. Get out there, get active. The Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. And Senator, we were just talking a moment ago about unemployment insurance and how the multiplier effect. Basically, when you pay out unemployment insurance, it really doesn't cost the government anything because it stimulates the economy. And I pointed out that the Republicans, when Bush was president, seemed to understand this because they passed it over and over and over again. Could it be that, is it ideology or is it partisanship? Could it be that they're actually trying to hurt the economy in order to hurt the Obama administration?
Well, I think it's maybe a little bit of both, but it's certainly ideological in the sense that the Republicans have now moved much further to the right than where they were in previous years. And when you are led by people like the Koch brothers and others who believe absolutely that programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Environmental Protection Agency, the concept of the minimum wage, that all of these programs should either be eliminated completely and privatized or significantly cut, then you are living in a different world than we were a few years ago. So there are folks out there who believe that the idea of unemployment insurance itself is not a good idea, let alone extending it. So you have a Republican Party now dominated by billionaire interest, right-wing interest, who have a very different role in terms of what government should be doing than was the case 5 or even 10 years ago.
Okay. Walter in Tempe, Arizona. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Walter? Oh, maybe Walter has his phone on mute.
Senator Sanders and Tom, thank you for so much that you do for all of us. I'm just wondering, how is it that everyone I speak with, be it liberals or conservatives or anywhere in between, all want money out of politics, yet you don't hear many of the politicians talking about actual reform? How do we change that?
Well, Walter, let me talk about it. Here's one politician who does talk about it. I think that the kind of that the flood of money, the torrential flood of money into politics today is undermining the very foundations of American democracy. So when we talk about any issue that's out there, you talk about healthcare, you talk about education, you talk about the economy, you talk about climate change, talk about women's rights, talk about any of those issues, all of which are enormously important. What is even more important in terms of the political process is the role that money is playing in politics today. And that started years ago, but it was certainly, it's always been a factor. But citizens, this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision of 3 years ago just completely opened the floodgates of money. And now what we're looking at in American politics today is you can have tens of millions of people who feel strongly about an issue. And then you got on the other side of that issue a handful of billionaire families who are able to provide huge financial support to the candidates that represent their interests, These very same individuals are able to open up all of these think tanks, own media, play a role way out of proportion to their numbers. And I can give you a dozen examples. Let me give you one. Every poll that I have seen says that the American people, whether they're Democrats, whether they're Republicans, whether they're independents, whether they're progressives, whether they're conservatives, you know what? They do not want to see Social Security cut. They don't want to see Medicare cut. They don't want to see Medicaid cut. And you know what, by the way? Many of those people want to see the wealthiest people and largest corporations pay more in taxes. That's what the American people believe. Then you go to Capitol Hill, and you see a whole different dynamic which has been created by billionaires and right-wing think tanks and their lobbyists. And that dynamic is, of course we have to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Of course we have to protect all of the loopholes that corporations receive, 1 out of 4 of which does not pay any federal taxes at all. That's that's the logic within Washington and inside the Beltway, and yet the world looks very, very different outside the Beltway, and that is precisely because of money in politics. It is bad. It is getting worse. Billionaires sit in a room, literally sit in a room. They said, who are we going to support? Who are we going to put hundreds of millions of dollars into? So unless we get a handle on that, A, by overturning Citizens United, and B, by moving to public funding of elections, democracy in this country is under real severe attack.
Right, and we can't do B until we do A.
Right.
Yeah. Ken in Silver City, New Mexico, listening on KABQ. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hey, Senator. Question here. I'd like to find out about reversing privatization. Tom always rants about how the NSA should not be privatized and a few other things. But if you take all the people that are privatized now in the government, whether it be NSA, whether it be defense, whether it be all the rest of it, and I think that I heard before that Edward Snowden was making $200,000 a year. If you took those, reversed it, and made them government jobs at $60,000 or $70,000 a year, you could add 3 people for every one Edward Snowden. You could rehire the Edward Snowden plus another 2. You don't have to go back to Congress for a nickel. The funds are already there. Cutting up contracts, they don't have any problems as far as cutting up contracts for unions and all the rest of these things. Why can't you re-privatize and go back and making government jobs instead of these private jobs? And if you took a look at all of them, wouldn't that be?
Ken, we're going to hit the break here.
Thanks for the question. It's a good question, and when you were speaking, something came into my mind. I was remembering. I was in Afghanistan a few years ago, and we were in one of these heavy-duty security vehicles. And there were 2 guys. Well, we'll pick this up, I guess, after the break.
We'll pick it up after the break. And this is a great topic. It is our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Your opportunity to participate in our National City Hall, held every week right here on this program with Senator Bernie Sanders. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov. Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. While the media was focused on Chris Christie and Bridgegate, Congress moved closer to accepting a massive international trade agreement. On Thursday, a bipartisan group of U.S. senators proposed legislation to give the Obama administration the power to fast-track the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other controversial trade deals. The White House welcomed the fast-track proposal and issued a statement saying, "We need to use every tool we have to knock down trade barriers." If this legislation passes, the president could push through the TPP and other deals, and Congress would only get an up or down vote on whether or not to approve them. The TPP is the largest of these proposed deals, as it includes the U.S. and 11 Pacific Rim nations, and nearly all of its provisions have been negotiated in secret. The few leaked sections of the TPP exposed the danger of this trade deal to our jobs, our environment, our civil rights, and even our national sovereignty. This massive trade agreement would even allow mega corporations to challenge U.S. laws that stand in the way of their unending greed. We don't need free trade, which drives down wages and sends more American jobs overseas. We need fair trade. And we certainly don't need to give corporations any more power to put profits over people. Congress should never give up their power to debate and amend trade agreements, and they must stop the Trans-Pacific Partnership from destroying our jobs, our civil rights, and our national sovereignty. In Screwed News, Republicans in Missouri began the new legislative year with a bang. Rather than starting the year off focusing on new jobs or boosting their economy, right-wing lawmakers in that state are fighting to pass right-to-work-for-less legislation. Despite the fact that Governor Jay Nixon has promised to veto the bill if it passes, Republican House Speaker Tim Jones is pushing forward the anti-labor legislation. For years, the Missouri Republican Party has been advocating so-called right-to-work bills like those recently passed in Indiana and Michigan. Workers in states which have enacted the right-to-work-for-less laws have seen their yearly wages decline by an average of $1,500 per worker, and their health benefits and pensions get slashed. These bills do nothing but benefit big business and destroy unions, and the voters of Missouri need to make it clear that they will not accept any right-to-work-for-less laws from their legislators. In the best of the rest of the news, the governor of New York has made a big commitment to renewable energy. On Wednesday, Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that his New York Sun initiative will invest $1 billion in new funding for solar energy projects over the next decade. That program has already installed about 300 megawatts of solar capacity since it started in 2012, and Governor Cuomo hopes to install another 3,000 megawatts with this new investment. He explained, "That's enough solar power for 465,000 New York homes to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 2.3 million tons annually, equivalent of taking almost 435,000 cars off the road, and to create more than 13,000 new solar jobs." In addition to the 10-year program, Governor Cuomo unveiled a $40 million competition to boost the development of community microgrids and another public-private program to come up with a renewable heating source for New York. These programs will go a long way toward helping the people of New York City and New York State with energy prices and towards putting their state on the path to a cleaner future. According to radcast.org, waves of radiation have moved into other parts of our country, causing levels to spike in many regions. Charleston, West Virginia is averaging 43 counts per minute with spikes of 73, and Salisbury, Mass. Is sitting at 45 with highs of 76. Spearfish, South Dakota is reporting levels of 60 counts per minute with spikes of 88 counts per minute. And Lakewood, Colorado is hovering at 65 with highs of 101. Fresno, Colorado is sitting at 42 with spikes to 70 counts per minute. And Tucson, Arizona is averaging 50 with peaks up to 154 counts per minute. Seaside, Oregon is seeing an average of 31 counts per minute with highs of 61. And Seattle, Washington is sitting at 30 counts a minute with spikes of 59. Radcast.org's alert level is 100 counts per minute, but they remind us that there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation. The Environmental Protection Agency is making fracking companies disclose their use of toxic chemicals, but only for fracking companies that are drilling in federal waters. The EPA established a new rule requiring gas and oil companies to publicly report the dangerous chemicals used during the fracking process, which are typically dumped into the open ocean. Environmental groups would prefer that the EPA require all fracking wells to report their pollution or ban them from drilling in the ocean entirely, but at least some of these companies will finally have to reveal the toxic makeup of their fracking sludge. And finally, Australia's National Science Agency has apologized to a 7-year-old girl named Sophie for failing to make her a fire-breathing dragon. Sophie asked her parents for a pet dragon for Christmas and was told that such a gift wasn't possible, so she wrote a letter to the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization asking the scientists if they could make her a flying dragon. She wrote that she would name the dragon Toothless if it was a girl after the friendly dragon in a famous book series, or Stuart if it was a boy after her father. The scientists issued her a formal apology saying, "We've missed something. Over the past 87 years, we have not been able to create a dragon or dragon eggs." The story didn't end there, however, as the scientists sent Sophie her very own dragon, made from titanium on a 3D printer. It may not fly or breathe fire, but they said, Couldn't sit here and do nothing. After all, we promised Sophie we'd look into it. That's the way it is. Today, Friday, January 10th, 2014. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line, taking your calls. And Senator Sanders, we were on a topic just as we hit the break.
Right. Walter talked about the need to reverse privatization, and I largely agree with him. And I was mentioning that when I was in Afghanistan a few years ago, I was being driven around in Kabul by two guys. One was driving and one was on the passenger seat carrying a automatic rifle. And one guy was in the U.S. military, and the other guy was a private contractor. They were both doing exactly the same work. One was being paid, to Walter's point, significantly more than the other guy. And you're seeing that all over governmental programs and agencies where the private sector people, in many cases, are being paid a lot more than people who work for the United States government. So I think if his point is that we can save a lot of money and in some ways improve the quality of our services, I think he's right.
Judy in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, Senator Sanders, hold on. Let me get off speaker here. Senator Sanders, thanks for taking my call. I had received a reply from Senator John Boozman of Arkansas regarding country of origin labeling. He came back and he referred to this as an agreement under the WTO, called it COOL, C-O-O-L. Said that we had tried that, but we subsequently were sued by Canada and Mexico because they determined their products would receive less favorable status to U.S. consumers. This tells me that U.S. consumers prefer to buy American, and don't these fair trade agreements that allow not only one country to sue another, but hinders consumers from knowing the country of origin and prevents us from buying U.S.-made goods, beef or food or whatever, which would stimulate job growth here?
Judy, I think you're exactly right. I think people have a right to know. It would seem pretty elemental that people have a right to know where the product that they are purchasing is made. And they have a right to know because in some cases, say if it's an agricultural product, they feel a lot more confident about regulations in the United States than in maybe Mexico or China or someplace else, and they want good quality food. But if it's another product, they also are interested in stimulating their own economy and making sure that people in our own country have decent paying jobs. Do people have a right to have that information? Well, I certainly do think that they should. But I think you're touching on now these trade agreements that in a dozen different ways, that being just one part of the concern, make it harder and harder for people in a country to have the kind of protections that they should be entitled to. So your concern, I think, is legitimate, and that is why I have been very strongly in opposition to these trade agreements that come down the pike.
Wayne in Chicago, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, let me cut the speakerphone. Okay, yes, good afternoon. But it's not a good afternoon for those 1.3 million people who've been thrown under the bus by the Republicans. I refuse to extend unemployment insurance. But I just want to make another comment. How is it that a Democratic president would push for a trade deal that's an absolute disaster for America? It doesn't make any sense. That's something that a Republican would do. I mean, it seems like this president just wants to do anything just so long as I make a deal. It doesn't matter if I backstab American people in the back, as long as I make a deal. So let me just say this. Here's my prediction. If the Democrats don't stand up and start having a spine and doing what's right, I think that guy was Deval Patrick at the Democratic Convention, who said they need to stand up and have a spine. They're going to lose the Senate, and they're also going to lose the House in 2016. Now, I want to get back to unemployment. What I want to ask the senator is there a legal way, if the Republicans in the House defeat the unemployment insurance, if it passes the Senate, first of all, are there legal maneuvers to ensure that these unemployed people can get their money? And I'll hang up and listen.
Well, I wouldn't use the word legal. They're political maneuvers that one can use. If one places a very, very high priority on extending unemployment benefits and say to the Republicans that, you know what, we ain't going home until these benefits are extended. And if you want A, B, and C, you're not going to get it until we have these benefits. That's the way we can prevail on this. We've got to make them an offer that they can't refuse. We've got to rally the American people, and legislatively, we've got to put this on legislation which must be passed. So that's the answer to that question. In terms of the politics of this whole business and Democrats having a spine, Wayne, I agree with you. I mean, I've been saying this for years. You have had a segment of the Democratic Party who think that success is becoming what we call Republican light, and that is trying to emulate the Republicans, not being as far to the right, clearly, but just, trying to develop some kind of mushy ground where they're pro-business and occasionally they pay attention to working families. I just think that if they maintain that policy, and if they don't begin to stand up forcefully and clearly for working families in this country, at a time when the middle class is disappearing, we have more people living in poverty than any time in the history of America. If they are not prepared to take on the big money interests who have so much economic and political power, I agree with you. I think the American people will sit there and say, what's the difference? Why should I even bother to vote? It doesn't matter. Both parties are working against my interests. So I think Wayne makes a very important point on that. And then he talks about the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And he's asking why it is that a Democratic president like Obama would be supportive of that. Well, I have to tell you that when you look at what goes on in Washington and why so many people are contemptuous of both political parties and of the political process in D.C., it has a lot to do with trade policies. And I would tell you that the president that signed NAFTA, that wasn't a Republican president, that was Bill Clinton. And on all of these issues, on trade policies, there have been Democratic presidents and Republican presidents and Democratic Congresses and Republican Congresses working together. And I think that's a sad state of affairs. My strong hope is that in terms of this TPP, we will have a number of Democrats and some Republicans as well who have the courage to stand up for working families, to say, don't ship my job to Vietnam. Allow me, as the previous caller indicated, to know what is where the product is manufactured. Don't allow corporations to overturn legislation protecting the environmental standards of our country or what states are doing. So I hope we can rally Congress, and I will tell you that I think there is more and more opposition to these trade agreements than was previously the case, because people can see the impact in terms of the decline of manufacturing. They can see the impact in terms of the race to the bottom and the lowering of wages for American workers. I will end my comment by saying that last year or so, there was a statement made by somebody from General Electric, and GE had broadened manufacturing, and I think it was Louisville, Kentucky, and they had added some hundreds of jobs in. That was the good news. Bad news is that the jobs that these workers were being paid were significantly less than what older workers were making. And the reason the guy said that they were able to expand in Kentucky, and this is true not just in Kentucky but all over America, is because when wages go down in America, we, quote-unquote, become more competitive with China. That's called the race to the bottom, and that's what these trade agreements have accomplished.
Morris in Long Beach, California, listening on KPFK. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Mr. Sanders. I simply wanted to bring to everyone's attention that since the Bush tax cuts went into play, $1 trillion that should make the U.S. Treasury each year does not make the U.S. Treasury. And as a result, the United States government doesn't have any money to even enforce the law. For example, down in West Virginia, you have 9 counties that cannot drink any other water. And I think that's due to the fact that the government can't enforce any of the regulatory laws that are on the books. My hope would be that the United States would go back to the era of Ike Eisenhower, his tax codes, giving the government more money, and also follow his advice regarding the military being curtailed. Okay. I'll take my comments off the air.
Thank you, Morris. We have 1 minute.
Thank you very much for that powerful and cogent comment. And I think you're right on all counts. I voted against the reauthorization of the Defense Department because, among other things, several other things, I thought the budget was much, much too large. And I made the point, I quoted from what Eisenhower had said in his farewell address, that every dollar, I know, Tom, you play that on the radio occasionally, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That every dollar spent on the military is a dollar taken away from human needs and children and so forth and so on. And what Eisenhower said way back in 1960 is as true today as it was then. So, I think that this issue of defense spending is one issue that we certainly have got to pay a lot more attention to than we have in recent years.
It's 15 minutes before the hour. We'll be right back with Senator Bernie Sanders.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov and sign up for the Bernie Buzz there as well. Welcome back.
Senator, did you call it, Tom? Morris also asked me about taxes and tax rates under Eisenhower and so forth. And again, he makes a very appropriate point. 1 out of 4 corporations do not pay any federal taxes today, and collectively, corporate taxes are significantly less than they used to be. Furthermore, while we did repeal Bush's tax breaks for the top 1%, we did not repeal them for other wealthier people. And Morris's point is that when you talk about the deficit and you talk about the budget, a key factor is not just what you spend, which is what Republicans talk about, but the other part of it is how much revenue comes in. And in fact, Morris is quite right. We are losing substantial sums of money by retaining Bush's tax breaks for the wealthy, and we should repeal them.
Okay. Let's see here. Robert in Ironwood, Michigan, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish Satellite Network. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Tom, and Senator Sanders.
Hi.
It was kind of similar to the last couple questions. I wanted to ask, with these programs of TARP and QE1 and QE2 and the bailouts and subsidies to corporations, Bernie, do you feel that this is all corporate welfare, and is there a way that we can possibly shame these corporations into paying their fair share?
I think there is, Robert. I think the American people are profoundly disgusted and sick and tired of the greed that they have seen from Wall Street and corporate America. We just had an example right now in the state of Washington, where Boeing, a very profitable corporation, has threatened that if workers there do not take a reduction in their pension program, they're going to move out of state. Time after time after time, workers are being confronted with a choice about giving up health care benefits or lower wages, or else their company is threatening to move to China or to Mexico. Wall Street, which was bailed out by the middle class and working families of this country, is now enjoying record-breaking profits, and then they send people to Washington, D.C. to say, oh, well, yeah, thanks. We Wall Street executives get huge retirement benefits. We get huge salaries, but we think you should cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That's good for the country. Are the American people sick and tired of corporate welfare? Are they sick and tired of the growing gap between the very, very rich and everybody else? Are they sick and tired of billionaires putting money into the political process to help destroy the American middle class? Yeah, I think the American people are sick and tired of that. And we have just got to educate, we have got to organize, we've got to demand that people who we send to Washington or to the state legislatures start sticking up for the endangered middle class and working families, the people who are really struggling, and have the guts to take on the big money interests whose greed is helping to destroy the American economy.
Yeah, we just have about 20 seconds. I frequently say it's not the Bush tax cuts we have to worry about, it's the Reagan tax cuts. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, obviously this ideology, started off big time with Reagan, and what Bush did is part of a continuation of what Reagan started.
Senator Bernie Sanders, we'll be right back with more of your questions for Bernie. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line taking your calls. David in Mounds, Oklahoma. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, thank you, Tom. It's good to talk to you and the senator. As a progressive in Oklahoma, let's get back to this affordable health care. My wife and I signed up on her. I'm going to be 65 when we'll get on Medicare in February. She had to sign up on this, and we got an affordable health care program, and we picked a plan. The plan is I'm going to have to pay $300 a month. My wife is fairly healthy. She's 60 years old. But when we went to the doctor, she went to the doctor and got a physical. And it paid for that, but she wanted to do some more tests, and the insurance will not pay for nothing other than preventive health care. Everything we get that we have to go to the doctor for, that she wants to do tests for, if it's not preventive, we have to pay up to $3,000 before the insurance pays anything. And it is, I just can't afford it on a fixed income. Do you have something to say about that?
Let me just say this, David. Obviously, I'm not familiar with the program in Oklahoma that your wife selected. It sounds to me like you probably have one with a high deductible and maybe less expensive than some other programs. To my view, I voted for the Affordable Care Act, and I think it is a step forward in terms of ending this obscenity of pre-existing conditions. It makes it easier for young people to stay on their parents' insurance program. We have significantly expanded Medicaid to people who otherwise would not be eligible for Medicaid. I work very hard to expand community health centers all over this country, and in a number of instances, people are going to get better quality health care at lower cost than they otherwise would have been able to get. But having said all of that, I think we have got to go further, and I think actually I'm chairman of a subcommittee which deals with these issues, and ask a very simple question is why we are the only nation on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a right, and why we end up spending almost twice as much per person on health care as the people of other nations whose outcomes are often better. So what I'm saying to you, David, is there are zillions of different programs. You know, you have one in Oklahoma and somebody will have one in Vermont. And I think what we have to do is and I'm glad that you're going to be eligible for Medicare soon, and I think that what we have to do is take the concept of Medicare and expand it to everybody in this country. I think if you're talking about cost-effective, quality health care, a Medicare for all single-payer system so that the people in Oklahoma are getting the same health care as the people in Vermont, and I think we can provide that health care at a lot lower cost than what we are presently doing. Because right now, the private insurance companies have enormous power over the process, and their goal is not cost-effective quality care. It's making as much money as they can. So that would be my response.
Dion in Waterford Works, New Jersey, watching on our YouTube channel. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Senator Sanders. First of all, I want to thank you for giving a voice to the people who can't afford to buy one. My question is regarding the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and with the current issue with unemployment and everything, and the extension being an issue now, considering that the Trans-Pacific Partnership is basically NAFTA on steroids, isn't this just going to be a huge problem down the line?
Deanna, I tend to agree with you. Yeah, I do. This is, in fact, as you know, it's a trade agreement between 12 countries, which represent 38% of the entire global economy. So this is a huge, huge trade agreement. And I have the same concerns and even more with this particular agreement, A, because of its size, B, because it has been negotiated virtually in secret, C, because it gives enormous powers for corporations over national governments and local governments all over the world. So I worry very much that this is an agreement written by the leading corporations of the world. I think it will benefit them, and I think it will be a continuation of the policy of driving the wages down in the United States and continuing this race to the bottom, which has been so harmful to our economy. So I share your concerns.
Senator, we have 2 minutes. You want to take another call, or do you want to?
Let's do one more call.
Okay. Sydney in Pollock, Louisiana. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Mr. Sanders, on our cost of living raises, when you give me a 1% raise on my $12,000, that's $120 a year, and a man making $100,000 at the top end of the pay scale for the government is getting $1,000. Now, did the cost of living go up $1,000 or $120?
Well, in terms of Social Security, you got a 1.5% increase, which I think underestimates the purchasing needs and the inflation that seniors have experienced. And one of the things that we are trying to do is not only prevent cuts, Sydney, to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, but to come up with an index that adequately reflects inflation in terms of the purchasing policies, practices of seniors. So we want to make sure that you get more. But one thing I do want to tell you, Sydney, you may complain, and you're right, that the 1.5% COLA is inadequate. We had to fight very, very hard and to rally the American people to make sure that Social Security was not cut, Medicare was not cut, Medicaid was not cut. So we're going to work hard to come up with a fairer way to bring forth and determine what a COLA should be.
Okay. We got sorry, say that again? Oh, 15 seconds. Okay.
All right. Well, let me just conclude the program today thanking all of the callers, wishing everybody a Happy New Year, and to tell everybody there's some huge issues coming before the Congress. People have got to be involved. They've got to get on the phone. They've got to start emailing, and they've got to start making this Congress represent and work for the middle class of this country and not just the top 1%.
Bernie, thank you for continually reminding us of the importance of activism. It is so great. Thanks, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Okay, my pleasure. Take care.
Thank you. Senator Sanders. We'll be back with Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.